The year was 1866. The Civil War had ended, but its shadow still stretched long across the Ozark Mountains. Burned homesteads dotted the valleys, and families lived with grief like a second skin. Widow Margaret Hensley tried to keep her small farm alive with the help of her only daughter, Clara, a spirited girl of 10. One foggy dawn, Clara froze while fetching water. Through the pine trees, she swore she heard a boy crying, not a bird, not the wind, but a child's voice breaking with sorrow. Margaret dismissed it at first, yet Clara tugged her sleeve with urgency. "Please, Mama. He sounds so alone." Though hesitant, Margaret agreed to follow the sound. The forest grew darker, the cries sharper, and then, in a clearing, they saw him. A pale boy, barefoot and trembling, eyes black as night. When Margaret asked his name, he whispered one word: Elias. The boy looked like he had stepped out of a nightmare and into their world. His clothes were torn, his face streaked with dirt, yet there was no wound, no blood. He did not shiver, despite the cold air. "Where's your family, child?" Margaret asked gently. Elias only lowered his gaze. Clara, unable to bear his silence, slipped off her shawl and draped it over his shoulders. The boy's black eyes flickered with something, gratitude or fear, she couldn't tell. They led him back to their cabin, feeding him bread and broth. He ate slowly, as if unsure what food was. The neighbors, however, were not so kind. "A boy found wandering the pines," one muttered. "Could be he's touched by the devil. Best to send him back where he came from." But Margaret, hardened by war and loss, would not abandon him. "He's only a child," she said, "and he'll have shelter here." In the days that followed, Elias spoke little. He answered questions with nods or short words. He claimed no memory of where he came from. Clara noticed he never spoke of parents, siblings, or home. The village gossiped endlessly. Some insisted he was a war orphan. Others whispered he was left by spirits. "A child with no past is a dangerous sign," Father Abram warned. But when Elias worked the fields with Margaret, he carried himself with quiet diligence. He tended chickens, fetched water, and followed Clara around like a shadow. Yet his presence unsettled even animals. Dogs growled as he passed. Horses whinnied nervously. One evening, as Clara recited her prayers, Elias lingered in the doorway, staring at the wooden cross above her bed. His expression was unreadable. "Do you pray, Elias?" she asked softly. His lips moved, but no sound came. Soon after Elias arrived, odd events stirred. Margaret noticed the hens laying twice their usual eggs. Their old mule, once lame, now pulled the plow with renewed strength. But darker things occurred too. Candles flickered out whenever Elias grew upset. Clara once found him in the middle of the night, standing motionless by her bed, gazing at her cross as though trying to understand it. The villagers began whispering louder. "Blessings and curses walk together," one woman said. "Mark my words, that boy ain't natural." Margaret scolded such talk, though deep inside, unease took root. One afternoon, Clara caught Elias tracing shapes into the dirt. Strange symbols, circles with lines that curved like fire. When she asked what they meant, he only shook his head. "I don't know," he whispered, "but sometimes my hands just do it." Father Abram Cole, the village preacher, came to see Elias after the rumors spread. A stern man, Abram carried his Bible like a weapon. He placed a hand on Elias's head and spoke a blessing. Elias stood still, eyes fixed on the ground. But later, Abram confided to Margaret in a low voice, "That child, he does not flinch at holy words, but neither does he bend to them. He carries something heavy, something not his own." Margaret frowned. "He is only a boy." "Perhaps you are mistaken," but Abram's voice hardened. "Some souls are born. Others are borrowed. I urge you, be wary." Margaret wanted to dismiss his words, but she could not shake the chill they left behind. That night, Elias whispered to Clara, "The preacher doesn't like me." He looks at me like I'm not real. Clara held his hand and promised, "You are real to me." Margaret enrolled Elias in the one-room schoolhouse, hoping it would bring him closer to the other children. But instead, his strangeness marked him. He sat at the back, silent, his black eyes unsettling. The blacksmith's son, a rough boy named Thomas, jeered at him daily. "Devil child," he hissed. One afternoon, Thomas hurled a rock at Elias. Clara gasped, but before the stone struck, Elias lifted his gaze. His expression never changed. Calm, cold. Thomas dropped to the ground, clawing at his throat as though drowning. His face turned blue, eyes bulging. Children screamed. The teacher rushed to help, and after several tense moments, Thomas suddenly gasped and recovered, sobbing in terror. No one touched Elias. Whispers spread like wildfire. The boy cursed him. Even Clara, though loyal, could not deny the power she had seen in her friend's eyes. Despite the fear surrounding him, Clara refused to abandon Elias. She sneaked him slices of pie, invited him to help with her chores, and spoke to him as if he were simply another child. One evening by the river, Elias finally spoke more than a sentence. "I don't remember a family. I don't even know if I ever had one. Sometimes, I feel like I was never meant to be here." Clara frowned. "Everyone belongs somewhere." He turned his black eyes to her. "What if I'm not someone? What if I'm something else?" She squeezed his hand tightly. "Then you're my brother. That's enough." Elias looked at her for a long moment. Then, for the first time since he arrived, he smiled. Margaret began waking to Elias's cries in the night. He thrashed in his sleep, whispering words she did not understand. One night, Clara shook him awake. Elias clutched his chest, gasping. "I see. Fire. Soldiers burning towns, mothers screaming for their children, but none of it is mine. It's like I'm remembering someone else's pain." Margaret felt a chill. War had scarred the Ozarks deeply, but Elias spoke as if he had walked every battlefield. "Maybe it's just nightmares," Clara offered gently. But Elias shook his head. "They don't feel like dreams. They feel like memories, but not mine." From then on, Margaret noticed him staring at passing strangers with uncanny recognition, as though their grief was etched inside him too. One autumn evening, a farmer's son was carried to Margaret's home, burning with fever and near death. Desperate, the family begged for help. Elias knelt by the child. Placing a trembling hand on his chest, he whispered a soundless prayer. His eyes darkened, and the room seemed to still. Within hours, the boy's fever broke. He sat up, sweating, but alive. Word spread like wildfire. The strange boy could heal the sick. Some villagers called it a miracle. Others muttered about witchcraft. Margaret, torn between fear and gratitude, watched Elias carefully. When she asked what he had done, Elias whispered, "I don't know. I just wanted him not to hurt anymore." Margaret touched his cheek. "Then that's enough." But her heart quivered. Power that could heal could also destroy. By winter, Elias had become the center of every conversation. Families whose children he had helped heal swore he was a blessing. Others, unsettled by the unexplained, declared he was cursed. At the tavern, men muttered over their mugs, "He don't belong here. That boy ain't natural. Either the preacher deals with him or we will." Father Abram called for prayer, yet even he struggled to explain Elias's presence. Some evenings he preached about angels sent from heaven. Other nights he thundered about demons cloaked in innocence. The contradictions only deepened the divide. Margaret overheard whispers of exile. Others sharpened knives. Fear had poisoned the hearts of neighbors she once trusted. At home, Clara clung to Elias. "Don't listen to them," she begged. Elias, calm and strange as ever, only said, "People fear what they cannot name." One night, Margaret awoke to the smell of smoke. Racing outside, she saw her barn engulfed in flames. Livestock screamed, flames devoured the wood, and the night sky glowed orange. Neighbors gathered, buckets in hand, but whispers soon turned to accusations. "It's him!" "The boy said it," one shouted. "He brought this curse." Elias stood barefoot in the dirt, watching the fire with wide eyes. Clara cried out, "He was asleep in the cabin!" He didn't do this. But suspicion had already taken root. Men crossed themselves, muttering that no barn had ever burned so fiercely, as though the fire itself had been summoned. Margaret buried her face in her hands, despairing not just for the loss, but for the battle she knew was coming. Elias turned to Clara, voice quiet but steady. "Maybe they're right. Maybe the fire is me." In the ash-choked silence after the barn fire, Elias pulled Margaret aside. He unbuttoned his shirt and revealed a mark over his heart, a circular scar with strange symbols, too perfect to be natural. "I've had it as long as I remember," he whispered. "Sometimes it burns, like fire under my skin." Margaret stared at the mark, a blend of fear and pity in her eyes. Who would do this to a child? "I don't think anyone did," Elias said. "I think it's why I exist." That night, Margaret prayed harder than she had in years, torn between fear of what he might be and the undeniable love she felt for the boy who had become like a son. Elias, sitting outside under the stars, pressed a hand to his scar and whispered to the darkness, "What am I?" A traveling doctor, Dr. Silas Wren, arrived in the village weeks later. Hearing of the boy, he insisted on examining him. Elias lay still as Wren pressed his ear to the boy's chest. His brow furrowed. "This heart, it doesn't beat like ours. Too steady, too perfect." He leaned back, eyes gleaming with fascination. "This is no ordinary child. He may be proof of something, beyond our sciences." Margaret bristled. "He's not proof. He's a boy." The doctor, however, saw discovery where she saw danger. "Mrs. Hensley, don't you see? If the world understood him, he could change everything. Medicine, life itself." But Margaret knew what such talk would do. The villagers already feared Elias. If they believed he was less human, they would not treat him as one. And she was right. Rumors spread faster than truth. Father Abram confronted Dr. Wren in the churchyard, their voices rising like thunder. "If not born of woman, then born of darkness," Abram insisted, pointing a shaking hand. "Such beings are snares for the soul. Cast him out before he drags us all down." Dr. Wren sneered. "And what if he is not curse, but miracle? What if he is God's mystery revealed to man?" The townsfolk stood divided. Some whispered Elias was heaven sent, a healing angel. Others muttered of witchcraft and devils. Caught between science and faith, Elias became the battleground for men's fears and ambitions. That evening, Clara whispered to him, "Don't listen to them. They don't see you like I do." Elias gave her a sad smile. "Maybe they see me clearer than you." The pressure grew heavier with each day. Whispers turned to threats. Men watched Elias with suspicion, hands never far from rifles. One evening, Clara found him sitting by the river, gazing at the moon's reflection. His face was calm, but his eyes heavy with sorrow. "If they hurt you," Clara whispered, "I'll never forgive them." Elias took her hand gently. "If they kill me, do not weep. I do not think I was made to last, but I am glad. I met you." Clara broke down, tears spilling. "Don't talk like that. You're my brother. You belong here." But Elias only looked at her with quiet tenderness, as if he knew a truth she could not yet accept. The breaking point came in spring. The villagers gathered in the square, torches in hand, demanding a decision. Elias was dragged before them. Some shouted for exile. Others cried for fire. The healer's miracles were forgotten, overshadowed by fear of the unknown. Margaret pleaded, "He is a child." Have you lost all mercy? Father Abram raised his Bible, voice shaking. If he is not of God, then we must not suffer him to live among us. Through it all, Elias did not resist. He only looked up at the sky, as though listening to voices no one else could hear. Clara clung to him, sobbing. Please don't let them take you. Elias whispered back, Don't fear. Fear is their chain, not mine. As the mob raised torches, the heavens broke open. A storm unlike any before swept the mountains. Lightning split the sky, winds tore through the valley, and rain lashed the earth in sheets. Torches sputtered out, men shielded their eyes, and the mob staggered in fear. Amid the chaos, Elias stepped forward. His small figure glowed faintly in the storm's flashes. His voice, calm and steady, carried above the thunder. I am not here to curse you. I was sent to remind you, mercy is greater than fear. The storm stilled at once. Clouds parted. The rain ceased as though commanded, and silence fell upon the town. When the villagers looked again, Elias was gone. No footprints remained in the mud, no trace of where he had stood. Only Clara's sobs broke the silence. Some swore he had been taken by angels. Others muttered he had dissolved back into the darkness that birthed him. No explanation sufficed. Margaret knelt in the mud, heartbroken yet strangely at peace. She knew she would never see him again. The villagers dispersed in uneasy quiet. None spoke openly of what had happened, but the memory clung to them like a haunting. Elias had vanished, leaving behind no body, no grave, only his words. Mercy is greater than fear. Clara grew into a woman, carrying Elias's memory like a secret flame. She often told her children of the strange boy who had lived with them briefly, yet changed everything. He healed the sick, he carried sorrow not his own, and he vanished in a storm, she would say. Science could not explain him. Religion could not claim him, but I knew him as my brother. Her children would ask, was he an angel? Clara always smiled sadly. I don't know. Perhaps he was sent to remind us of something greater. Margaret, older and frail, still prayed for Elias at night, not for his safety, but in gratitude for the lesson his brief life had left behind. In the Ozark Mountains, the tale of Elias became legend. Some whispered he was the soul of every orphan lost in the war. Others claimed he was a miracle science could never unravel. Father Abram, until his dying day, confessed uncertainty. If he was devil, why did my heart ache when he left? And if he was angel, why did fear blind me to his mercy? But to Margaret and Clara, there was no mystery. Elias was simply a boy, lonely, fragile, extraordinary. His final words lingered like a hymn in the mountains. Mercy is greater than fear. And for generations, that truth outlived both science and religion, echoing in the hearts of those who heard his story.